Welcome back. This week on the Hill, Democratic senators spoke out about the opioid epidemic, hoping to include money for the crisis in the budget resolution bill.
Now, of course, the opioid epidemic has been taking a human toll, an economic toll. Bethesda resident Rick Werner joined Senator Chris Van Hollen earlier this week to speak on behalf of his son, James, who died earlier this year in an effort to get funding for mental health issues and drug treatment for addiction.
We lost our older son, Jamie, 10 months ago to an overdose of fentanyl. He was 27, and we miss him every day. He also started using drugs, including heroin. Substance abuse often goes hand in hand with mental health issues, as individuals are trying to quiet their mind and the pain related to its dysfunction.
Rick, thank you. Thank you for taking such a difficult personal tragedy and making it your mission to prevent other families from experiencing that tragedy. And our message here today is very simple, which is that words are nice, but they are not enough.
Well, we're pleased to have Rick Werner here with us this morning to join us again. If you've watched this program, Rick's a familiar face. He's been with us several times before. And, you know, Rick, it occurs to us, we're sitting here in December. You're coming up in February on the one-year mark of losing your son, Jamie. You've increased your public profile. You've spoken at events like this. Where do we stand now as far as your journey, as you've been involved with this and the things you've heard from politicians, both on the Democratic side and the Republican side? They talk a lot about this. Are they doing what they've told you they'll do?
Funding is a big issue, as was made clear in the event the other day. Declared a national public health emergency, but funds have not been attached to that. And folks who need treatment, treatment's expensive, and funding is needed to do that.
And Republicans, they defended that decision, or at least the administration did. They said that in the way the funding would be distributed, it would be different if it was a national public health emergency versus, I think, a national crisis or something like that. Do you agree with that decision in the long term? Is that maybe a smart long-term strategy? We just need to do something now to maybe stop the hemorrhaging, if you will.
You know, we'll have to see how that plays out over the next few months, if in fact they do come up with a strategy, because at this point they don't really have a fully fleshed out strategy. It sounds like they're trying to figure out one. So we'll see if they do.
While this political talk goes on, there's still a real problem out on the streets, especially in D.C., Maryland, Virginia. In Northern Virginia, we had at least half a dozen people recently lost to this cat fentanyl that's out there on the street. Is the message getting out to the people who are using about how deadly this stuff is, that no matter how experienced or how well you might think you know this, that you don't know what you might be putting into yourself?
That's difficult because for users, as I understand it, you want your next high, and in some cases you want your next high to be the highest high you've ever had, and you're not that worried about it. You think that you can manage it. You think that you know right where the precipice is and that you won't go over it.
Sure.
But as we know,
Rick, quickly, I know that this is about the budget. What do people that have a family member who is still addicted need that isn't necessarily financial? Where can you maybe direct them at this time that can give them some support? Or is it really about money right now? Is it the bottom line?
Well, it's number one is money for treatment. Number two is, like in our case, we tried to get our son to seek treatment, and he would never admit that he was using, and so he wouldn't. And that's a very, very difficult hurdle to get over.
And it's also a very, very common situation that a lot of families have faced over the years. Rick Werner, we thank you so much for continuing to come back with us. We'd like you to continue to come back as we track this really important issue for a lot of families in our area. We thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for being with us again. You're watching Fox 5 on the Hill.